Rum 333, a case study in terror. All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a supernatural investigation that just went horribly, horribly wrong. We're going to look at exactly how a perfectly controlled environment can just unravel into absolute chaos. You see, we're not just telling a spooky story here. Oh no, we're actually breaking down the complete psychological collapse of objective reality. It is a wild ride, so let's get into it.
Can logic and modern technology survive in a room where a violent history refuses to die? Honestly, this question right here is the beating heart of our whole explainer today. I mean, we all like to think that, right? If we've got our smart devices, our high-def cameras, and a really firm grip on reality, well, we're inherently safe. But what actually happens when you bring a totally evidence-based, highly skeptical mind into a space where the rules of objective reality just stop applying? Can logic actually survive that?
The Langham Hotel, room 333, the documented site of a historic murder-suicide, where a Victorian-era doctor brutally killed his wife on their honeymoon. So, to really grasp this event, we have to know the location. The Langham Hotel in London is literally world-famous for its luxury. But room 333? It carries some intensely dark, officially documented lore. The historical record shows that years ago, a Victorian-era doctor and his new wife checked into this exact room for their honeymoon. But instead of a romantic getaway, the doctor brutally murdered his wife right inside the room, and then took his own life. And as the legend goes, his spirit never actually checked out.
Let's look at the investigator profile. Name, Annie. Age, 25-year-old British journalist. Specialty, paranormal documentary filmmaker. Track record, known for debunking fake haunted locations. Mindset, highly logical, evidence-based, and deeply skeptical. Okay, so to get why this case is so shocking, we really need to understand our investigator here. Annie is not some amateur thrill seeker wandering around looking for ghosts in the dark. Her entire career track record is built on debunking fake haunted spots. She's highly logical, she relies purely on hard evidence. In fact, she checked into room 333 with one strict goal in mind: spend a single night, prove the legends were total myths, and just move on to her next project.
Modern expectations versus the Langham reality. Annie experienced this crazy immediate dissonance the second she arrived. I mean, the Langham's lobby was exactly what she'd expect, right? Bright, bustling, heavily carpeted, super modern. But the moment she gave the receptionist her booking for room 333, the staff member's smile just completely froze. Seriously. Instead of handing over a modern plastic keycard, Annie gets this heavy, old-school physical metal key. And when she actually steps off the elevator onto the third floor, it's completely deserted. The lights are this dim, sickly yellow, the wall paintings are totally faded, and the floorboards are creaking under her feet. When she finally grabs the massive brass handle of room 333, the metal is unnaturally, freezing cold. The scene: dark polished wood, Victorian decor, an antique dressing table, and a massive, full-length mirror positioned directly facing the bed. Let's actually step inside the room for a second. The physical layout here is so important for understanding the psychological trap that she walks into. The decor is aggressively Victorian. We're talking dark polished wood everywhere, this really imposing antique dressing table, and this is key. Pay really close attention to this detail. A massive full-length mirror mounted on the wall, positioned so it is staring directly at the bed. Literally everything in the room forces you to look right back at yourself.
Step 1, set up the tripod. Step 2, mount the camera. Step 3, configure the audio mic. Now, Annie is a total pro. She's not going to let some creepy antique furniture or spooky vibes rattle her. Before she even unpacks her bag, she methodically sets up her gear. Boom, Step 1 tripod is up. Step 2, high-def camera is mounted and rolling. Step 3, the audio mics are perfectly configured to pick up every literal pin drop in that room. She's intentionally building this perfectly controlled, monitored environment. For Annie, her technology is basically her armor.
Let's map out the escalation. In the evening, the equipment is systematically set up. At night, Annie eats a sandwich by the fireplace and accidentally falls asleep. Then at midnight, a sudden sharp knock at the door breaks the silence. The way this escalates from totally mundane to absolutely terrifying is just wild. The evening goes off without a hitch. Gears running perfectly, Annie orders a sandwich, pulls up a chair by the room's little fireplace to fight off that November chill, and just starts typing away on her laptop. She gets so in the zone with her research that she actually dozes off. It's completely perfectly peaceful. Fast forward to midnight. Out of nowhere, a sharp, incredibly loud knock at the door completely shatters the silence.
Your room service, madam. Annie jolts awake, right? She's completely disoriented. Then she hears the knock again, and this heavy, muffled man's voice through the thick door says, "Your room service, madam." Now, immediately the logical side of Annie's brain kicks in and says, wait, no way, that's impossible. She only ordered a sandwich, and she finished that hours ago. Figuring it's just gotta be some kind of weird late-night hotel mix-up, she gets up, walks over, and looks right through the peephole.
A severed head on a silver platter. Right outside her door, there's a butler standing there holding this large tray covered by a silver dome, a cloche. So Annie opens the door and politely tells him, "Hey, I didn't order anything else." But the butler absolutely insists it's for her, and he slowly lifts that silver lid. And what Annie sees sitting on that plate is her own violently severed head. No joke. It is a visual so incredibly horrific that she screams out loud and just squeezes her eyes shut on pure instinct. But when she snaps them open a split second later, the hallway is completely, entirely empty. The butler, the tray, that horrific vision, they just vanished into thin air.
Let's look at the equipment on it. The camera SD card, which should have visual evidence of the hallway, was completely corrupted. The voice recorder, expected to have the butler's voice and knocking, had blank audio. And the active mics, meant for full environmental sound, were only capturing a slamming door and Annie's screams. Annie slams her door shut, right? Her heart is literally pounding out of her chest, but she defaults to her training. She immediately checks her equipment. She's thinking, I've got cameras rolling. I've got active mics. I caught this. But when she audits the gear, it reveals a genuinely terrifying reality. Her objective reality was just completely ripped out from under her. That camera SD card she tested earlier, totally corrupted. The voice recorder that absolutely should have picked up the butler, dead silence. And those super sensitive active mics, they captured nothing. Zero zilch, except for the sound of Annie opening the door, screaming, and slamming it shut. Her trusted tech completely and utterly failed to validate a single thing she just experienced.
1 a.m. It's now exactly 1 a.m., and this is where the psychological terror starts mutating into physical terror. Even though she's got a fire roaring right there in the room's fireplace, the temperature in room 333 just plummets. It becomes freezing cold. You can practically see your breath. Annie is completely bewildered and understandably terrified, so she heads straight into the bathroom just to splash some freezing water on her face, trying to ground herself in something real.
The anomaly in the mirror. Rotting, decaying facial features, extremely long nails reaching out, torn, authentic Victorian-era clothing, glowing, piercing yellow eyes. But yeah, there is no grounding to be found here, because as she looks up from the bathroom sink and into the mirror, she sees an anomaly standing directly behind her, and the details her brain registers are just hyper-specific. This entity has a rotting, decaying face. He's got these incredibly long nails reaching right out for her neck. He's wearing torn, completely authentic Victorian-era clothing, and he has these glowing, piercing yellow eyes. It's a one-to-one match for the murderous doctor from the hotel's lore, but when she violently spins around to confront him in the actual bathroom, there is nobody there.
The door is locked. The lights are flickering. Her fight-or-flight response just completely takes over, right? Mostly flight. Annie knows she is in serious danger. She scrambles to grab her bags, runs over to that heavy brass door to get the heck out of there. She pulls the handle, but it won't turn. The door has been locked from the outside. And then, out of nowhere, all the lights in room 333 start to aggressively flicker. And in that strobing, flashing, disorienting darkness, she sees him. That pale, yellow-eyed Victorian entity is slowly, deliberately walking right toward her.
When the hotel staff finally broke the door down, what did they actually see? At this point, Annie is screaming for her life. And she is screaming so loudly, with just this primal, desperate terror, that hotel staff all the way out in the distant hallway actually hear her. They drop everything, sprint to room 333, force that heavy door open, and rush inside. But this really begs the question. What did the staff actually witness when they broke in?
She was hitting her own head against the glass. The answer to that is deeply, deeply disturbing. Because the staff, they didn't see a Victorian ghost. They didn't see some unseen monster strangling a guest. They just saw Annie, totally alone in the bathroom. But Annie was screaming wildly, grabbing her own head and violently smashing her own face into the shattered shards of the mirror. She was completely trapped inside a reality that literally no one else could see. She was fighting off an attacker that was literally using her own body as a weapon against her.
A tragic repetition of history. The hotel staff frantically managed to restrain her, pulling her away from the broken glass, until she finally just passed out from the profound shock of it all. Later on, while she was recovering down in the hotel's medical room, Annie explained everything. She told them how the terrifying doctor had grabbed her by the hair and repeatedly slammed her face into the mirror. And it was right then that a staff member revealed the absolute most chilling detail of this whole explainer. That was exactly, precisely, how the doctor had murdered his wife all those decades ago. It was a tragic, horrific repetition of history, mapped perfectly onto a brand new victim.
When your own mind and body become the weapon, how can you ever truly escape the haunting? Annie did survive the night physically, thank goodness. But I really want to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up today's explainer. Annie went into that room armed with logic, high-tech cameras, and a deep, deep well of skepticism. But the entity in room 333, it didn't just break her cameras. It completely bypassed her logic. It made her own mind and her own body the instrument of her destruction. So when a haunting actually forces you to become your own attacker, how do you ever fully heal from that? Annie might have checked out of the Langham Hotel, but the psychological scars of room 333